Welcome to session 3 of our 3-part series, Using GPTs for Business. I am Deborah Korn, the intergalactic ambassador to the Printiverse at Print Media Center, where I provide printspiration, education, and resources to print and marketing professionals around the world. And I am also the executive director of Girls Who Print, a global nonprofit organization, and we support the careers of women across their career in print and marketing. This session is all about using GPTs as teammates, not just tools. We'll explore how GPTs can support your day-to-day work, and you'll learn how to create simple AI helpers to streamline tasks, save time, and bring more consistency to your process. Guiding our GPT journey is John Munsell. He is the CEO of Bizzuka. John has developed influential frameworks such as the AI Strategy Canvas, which we reviewed last session, scalable prompt engineering, and the Ingrain AI roadmap. These tools are designed to help organizations implement AI consistently, securely, and at scale. John's also the author of Ingrain AI Strategy through Execution, and his methods are now taught at LSU and used by professionals and business and government and education. We will be giving away 2 books at the end of this session, so you just have to be here to be in the running. And welcome back to the Printiverse, John.
Thanks, Deborah. I appreciate it. Good to see everybody here. I'm in my 3rd week of trying to get rid of a cough, so I'll try to mute myself as that occurs. So anyway, appreciate everybody coming back. We will dive right in. So everybody can see that okay, I'm guessing. All right, so I got so many windows open. I don't have total visibility of the chat. So Deborah's going to man the chat. And what we're trying to do is just kind of roll through this smoothly. We're going to assemble all the questions, and Deborah and I next week are going to record a separate thing that answers any of the questions that we couldn't get to at the end of this, assuming we have time. So anyway, this session is, of course, how do you use AI beyond just generating content? And that's where we talk about creating custom GPTs that solve real problems. So they're really more designed to take a repetitive task and simplify it so you don't have to constantly go back and forth with the AI tool. So let me see. Here we go. All right, so I want to just kind of give you an example of one of the ones that we created ourselves. So we saved 15 hours per week with one GPT that handles our proposals. Before, it would take us about 2 days to generate a proposal, and we would have a whole lot of boilerplate and all that stuff in there. Now it takes us about 20 minutes, and they're all done through AI. So we literally are saving about 15 hours a week, which is 240x faster turnaround, and it's a 90% reduction in our time. So, whenever you can take a process that used to take you 2 days, now keep in mind that 2 days doesn't mean 16 hours worth of work. It means just how do you squeeze in the time to get it done? And 2 days and a delay to get a proposal around to somebody when you can get it turned around in an hour, that's a big difference in closing ratios, right? So here's why you're feeling probably busy but not productive, because 40% of your time is typically devoted to repetitive tasks, whereas 30% of it is just switching context from one task to another. And then another 20% is really spent on actual thinking, and only about 10% is really creative work. So how do we get rid of all of that interruption from repetitive tasks? Well, we do that with a custom GPT. So it takes that repetitive nature, turns it essentially into a permanent prompt that sits in this custom GPT or project, depending upon what tool you use. All right. So let's take a look at what it looks like. Why prompting versus a GPT? Well, when you're prompting with an AI tool, you're basically starting from scratch every single time, right? And that's not what we want to do. We don't want to start from scratch. We really want to just have a process where we can preload all the context that we need into a system, and we can now have consistent personality and process. And we want to monitor the progress and update our knowledge base documents inside the GPT so that it constantly improves. All right. So we're basically trying to move from one-off interactions with an AI tool to building intelligent assistants that really understand our business or our workflow or whatever our specific roles might be within the company. So what makes a good GPT scope? So when you're trying to say, I want to build one, well, how do you scope it out? Well, first, it's got to solve one clear problem. That's the most effective way to do it. Just think of one focused problem, and then think about how you can get it to have consistent, repeatable outputs. So we want this to be a predictable process. So think about any of your SOPs you have. That's how you're going to do it and build those reliable results. For the first ones I build, I like to look at the biggest opportunities and the lowest hanging fruit. And I'm looking to try to save 3 hours per week. That's only about, I don't know, 30 some odd minutes a day. That's not much in terms of savings. But when you add that up over the course of a year, that's a significant amount, right? There are times when you can create GPTs that only going to save you 20, 30 minutes, and that might be 20, 30 minutes a month or so. But I like in that initial run to try to figure out how am I going to save 3 hours a week at a minimum. And you need to be able to explain it in one sentence. What is it that we're trying to do here? So the bottom line is that a good GPT is going to be the difference between creating a useful tool or just having a whole bunch of digital clutter inside of your inbox and inside of your GPTs. So we don't want that. So now the question is, what do you do? Like, where can a GPT save you time? Well, you first ask yourself, what tasks are eating the majority of your time? Here are a few examples, right? Email responses to common questions. That can really soak up a lot of your time. I've worked with a lot of people, from professors to sales reps to CEOs, who say, man, give me a GPT that can reply faster. And that's a big one. Creating quotes and proposals is another one. Scheduling and coordinating, researching and creating summaries is another one. Creating internal documentation is another one. The bottom line is every repetitive task is a GPT just waiting to be built. So here's an example of just all of, well, this is, I don't know, not even half of the ones that we've created for ourselves, but I wanted you to just kind of look at some of these that we've created, right? So over here, I have an in-house counsel GPT that just is literally acts as legal counsel. So I have it analyze legal documents and insert stuff that it knows about our company, from our tax IDs to our DUNS ID to all that other fun stuff that I hate looking up. It'll do all that. I know there are URLs that'll do this, there are websites that'll do this, but for me, I'm typically trying to figure out, if it's 10:30 in the morning Central Time, I want to know what time is it in Australia, what time is it in New Zealand, what time is it in the UK, and so I built one that would just quickly tell me all that as I can shoot out messages to a lot of parts of the world. Speaking of other parts of the world, the EU has an Artificial Intelligence Act, and man, that's a complicated beast. So I built a GPT around that so I could just ask it questions and integrate some of that stuff into our training. Then a sales coach. I mean, I could go on and on. This one is for publishing the book. This one is a sales tutor, which is just modestly different from the sales coach in that this is a specific process, and this is more general in nature. A persona emulator, where we can literally have it emulate a persona and evaluate materials that we're producing, evaluate our website, evaluate collateral. This one will analyze transcripts and try to figure out what the buying persona is really about. How do they make decisions? I even have a swimming pool analyst that'll look at some of the tests, literally take a picture of a test strip and then tell me what I should do. So anyway, the bottom line is, in the previous session, we went over the AI strategy canvas, Well, the canvas becomes your brain, if you will. It's the architecting of the GPT's brain. So we're going to go through the canvas to really help us think through all of the different moving parts that need to be sitting here inside of this GPT, whether it's a knowledge-based document or whether it is just how you structure your prompt. So it really helps out to go through the canvas. So here's the blueprint that we go through when we're building a GPT. First, what's the purpose or goal of the GPT? What is it that we really want it to give us? And second, what questions should it ask us if we haven't given it complete information? What's that interaction look like? And then what kind of documents does it need inside of it as support documents or knowledge-based documents that we want it to call upon all the time? So it's not calling on its generic knowledge. It's calling on very specific knowledge first. It could be details about our programs, our products, our features and benefits, our values, any number of things. And then what's the process that this needs to go through in order to produce the output? And then finally, what's that output look like? So all of those things are essentially your blueprint for creating a custom GPT. And if you master these components, that's when you move beyond just what I call cheap parlor tricks to a really mission critical business tool. And anybody can build these. It doesn't matter whether you're on the front lines or you're up in the sea level. Everybody can build these, and they're highly, highly effective and efficient. All right. So as I always say, start with good, but strive for excellence. So 80%, if you build a GPT that's just 80% interactive, it doesn't have to be fully automated. It just has to solve a specific problem. But if you're really trying to build something that's 100% AI automation and it doesn't work, well, that's not getting you anywhere, right? We want to build something that is highly functional, that saves time every day, and that all of our teams can share and adopt, right? And that delivers true ROI. That's better than trying to build 100% automation that fails. So we want to take our baby steps. We want to take those instant gratification wins right away. All right, so let me give you an example of a quick win. This is what we would call the meeting insight generator. So there's a bunch of AI note takers in here. Every meeting that we have is basically done over Zoom these days. And so we have AI note takers present all the time. So what I want to do is be able to just provide an input or a meeting transcript from that note taker. And then I've got a goal. I want it to analyze and give me some insights as to what that conversation was about. And then I'm going to use the canvas to help me flesh out what additional context that GPT is going to need. And then I'm going to define the process that I want that GPT to go through in order to give me that final output. And then what's that output look like? So literally in 3 minutes, I can take a transcript and I can generate some insights and be well on my way to a proposal by building something this similar or this simple. And the bottom line is we're trying to take an input and get an output that isn't just a to-do list. I want to have more from that particular transcript, right? I want some really powerful insights, but I want it to be a reusable process. If I structure the prompt right, I can share that prompt inside my organization and other people can use it, and they can also modify that prompt to serve a different purpose for them. Okay, so let's roll into building one together. Let me see how much, yeah, we got sacks of time now. Okay, so if we look at this one, this is the idea. We're going to define a job clearly. In this particular case, what I'm looking for is a GPT that will provide insights from a sales conversation and then develop a proposal. I got to be really clear on what this specific GPT is going to do. And in my case, like I said, I want it to pull out insights that I wouldn't normally get. I don't want it to just do a to-do list. So I want it to look for nuances in the conversation that might give me additional awareness. Next thing I want to do is map decision points, because there are going to be points where I want to interject. Okay. So I don't want it to just barf a whole lot of information out. I want it to pause and reflect, and then I want to get some information from it. Okay. Then I want to figure out, all right, what additional knowledge do I need for this thing? So I'm going to upload that knowledge base. I'm going to assemble that. And then I'm going to configure the output. So I want to know exactly what is this going to look like when I'm finished. In other words, if I'm generating a proposal, I want to tell it what that looks like. All right. So there I'm going to define the format as well. And then I'm going to test and refine. So that's how we're going to do this particular one. All right. So let me see if I can just swing over here and we'll go into a live demo. I was going to do this in ChatGPT, but for some strange reason today, ChatGPT was failing when I was uploading documents. So I thought, okay, they probably have fixed it, but rather than wrestle with that, I'm just going to build a Claude project. It's essentially the same thing, right? So what you would do is you would just click over here and go to new project, and you'd name the project. And now we have a team version, so we can decide whether or not the whole team gets to see it or whether or not it's a private one. So we would just simply do that. Now, if I were going to do the same thing in ChatGPT, whoops, wrong button. If I were going to do it in ChatGPT, I'd go over here, go to my GPTs, and then I would tell it to create a GPT. All right, so I'm going to kind of walk you through both of them, but when it comes to uploading the documents, I'm not really trusting ChatGPT this morning. So in ChatGPT, you're going to name the GPT. And so let's just go over here because I've essentially got it set up already. And we're going to kind of copy and paste all this fun stuff. So these are the details of the Claude project, and we can just paste that over here. So we have a transcript with insights. And in this one, I just titled it No Knowledge Base because I want you to see the difference between having a knowledge base and not having a knowledge base. All right. So that's it. And this is the description of this particular one. And you can see here they ask for a description, so we'll pop it in here. This area in ChatGPT is for the actual instructions. Think of it this way. This is where you're going to put the master prompt. I hate to use that phrase, but it's essentially where the system instructions are for this GPT to operate. So over here, when you're having a discussion with it, that's a prompt, but this is the persistent prompt that stays put, that just tells the GPT everything that it's supposed to do when you interact with it. All right. These conversation starters, I generally, sometimes I'll have them, most of the time I don't, but that if you typed in something here, it would put a little button here where you could click the button and it would do something. It doesn't really work that well for me because I'm asking it to do stuff that you can't really put into a button because you have to upload documents ahead of time. But there are those occasions when I create a little button here. This is where you would upload the knowledge-based documents in ChatGPT. In Claude, you're going to go right here and upload the knowledge documents. All right, so we're inside of this one with no knowledge base, so you don't see any documents here. All right, but over here, if I were to take this and start to put the custom instructions in, the thing that I like to do is this little, now you see I got Grammarly on here, so that's going to block the screen a little bit. But if I click that button, I can zoom to a larger screen to paste in my system instructions. Now, let me go and review what we're looking to do here, right? We're looking to define the job, map the decision points. That's a critical thing. Load the knowledge base, configure the outputs, and then define the format, and then test and refine. The decision points. So let's go through the actual prompt here. If you remember, let's go back over to this. And when we were looking at the strategy canvas last time, it gives us a breakdown of the context and the things that we're going to need for a GPT, right? So do we need a target audience for this one? We don't really need a target audience because we're really pulling from a transcript. And so we're really looking at who these people are, not who they are theoretically. So we don't need that. But if we're going to produce a proposal, then yeah, we need information about our company. We need a lot of information about our products and services. The context is essentially the things that we're pulling out of the transcript, and the resources, that's the transcript, right? The role, we don't really need a role per se because we're just asking this GPT to extract insights from it. So I don't necessarily have to define a role, but I am going to define the style that I want this GPT to talk with me in. And the rules might be some things that we want it to not say. And then finally we get to the request. Okay. So that's our process for thinking through the GPT. So what I have here is the style. So this, I know it's complicated. You don't have to write this kind of a style parameter, but I like it because I can fine tune things a little bit better. But you could literally just say, write in a, happy voice, whatever you put in here. But if you're going to fine tune things for your proposals and how you want it to look, then you get into the variables like this. And this is some of the things that I teach in the book and some of the things that we teach to our students. The output is over here. So here we're looking at generating insights, and this is the actual goal of this particular GPT. So for the insights that we're trying to extract from a transcript, we're saying, I want you to write a strategic intelligence briefing, and we want to write in flowing paragraph style, not just a whole lot of bullets. So there's the narrative structure we want to roll through, and then we want to reserve the bullet points only for essential lists such as specific action items, revenue figures, et cetera. Okay. So I want it to read like a true briefing. And then these are the goals. I want it to extract strategic insights from the meeting by identifying buying signals, by looking for aha moments and value recognition, the unspoken pain points and strategic gaps, decision-making intelligence. I want to know what will this conversation tell me about potential internal dynamics and approval processes, et cetera. And then what are some competitive positioning opportunities? So you see, my goals with this transcript aren't what you would typically get from the default transcript to-do lists that come with most of these AI tools, right? So I'm trying to really extract some more intelligence from there. And this is my framework. All right. I want it to rank findings by revenue, potential, and probability of success. And then I want to know how these insights would influence our approach, our messaging, our solution positioning. Okay. So hopefully I got that big enough to where everybody can see. And then this is the format I like in a proposal. Okay. I like to have an introduction. I like to have a summary of concerns and problems. I like to have desired outcomes. I like to have a proposed solution. I like to tell them what the investment's going to be looking like, and then what are the next steps. All right. Now, that's my process for a proposal. You probably have your own. So the more you can define what that output looks like, the better. So this, once again, these are the insights we're trying to get out of it. This is the goal. This is the process that I want to use for analysis. And then when it generates a proposal, I want it to use this format. Then I get to the request. Okay, if you remember, I want to know where the human input is needed. And so what I've done here is I've created a step-by-step process. I say, look, you're going to be provided with a meeting transcript. Why do I start that way? Because I don't want to tell it, hey, I'm giving you this transcript. All I want to do is upload the transcript and hit go. And then I want it to roll. So by telling it in advance what it's waiting for, I skip a step. I skip a bunch of keystrokes. All right. And then I say, you're going to proceed with this request step by step, and you're going to only proceed to the next step when instructed. Why do I do that? Well, because I want to have my input in a certain way at certain points. So the more you do that, the better you're going to be. All right, so that step one is I want you to analyze the transcript, looking for those insights and the business opportunities. I want you to use the analysis framework that I just outlined up here, right? And I want you to achieve the goals, and I want you to prepare an intelligence briefing with these insights, output, and using style, okay? And then I'm telling it, pause, let me review the insights before you move on to step two. And when I approve of the output, then you can proceed to step two. And then step two is prepare a proposal. All right. Everybody get that? I know that's a complicated beast, but when you think through it in advance and you know what your SOPs are, you probably have all this documented anyway. All we're doing is turning it into a prompt that's then going to sit right in here. Okay. So that's the idea behind this. So now all I have to do, and again, I'm usually working inside of a Google Doc or a Word doc so I can really have some room to play around. But I'm just going to take this and I'm going to copy it. And then I would literally just paste it inside of here. And so that then becomes my instructions for this GPT, but I have no knowledge base at this point. Now, what I do in ChatGPT is I turn on all of these things because sometimes I want it to generate an image. Sometimes I want it to operate inside a canvas. And at other times, I have found, and this is, I don't know why, but sometimes it won't read the knowledge base documents first unless this is turned on. I think it's just glitchiness in ChatGPT. I don't know why. So I always turn it on just so that it knows how to read my documents. All right. And so at that point, you've got it built. Now, in ChatGPT, you can click this little button and use Dolly, and it'll use this information and try to create some crazy artwork. And sometimes it's cool, and sometimes it's a bunch of noise. It also, yeah, see, this is a nice bunch of noise, but you can click on this and you can upload your photo if you want. But at this point, we now have a GPT built. And again, we have a team version of ChatGPT, so I could invite others to this. I'll go check it out over here. It has no knowledge base. Over here, it's already created with no knowledge base, and it already has the prompt inside of it. All right. So what I'm going to do is, hang on a second. Yeah, just to make sure that we're all compared. I have a document over here. It's a transcript. All right. It's a scrubbed transcript, so it's not got the names of the actual people in here, with the exception of me. But I'm just going to upload that straight away into Claude, and then I'll do the same thing into ChatGPT. All right, so it uploads both of them, and now we just hit go on this one, and then we'll do the same thing here. Now you can use different models too over here, all right, which is kind of handy. So we're just going to stick with Sonnet 4. The other thing that we can do over here is we can tell it to do extended thinking. And I kind of like this when I'm doing an analysis in Claude. It just makes it take a few more steps, and it also articulates its thinking process. So that's kind of fun to watch. So here, I'll show you what happens. It takes a little bit more time when you do that, but we're only talking about seconds. So here you see it's identifying the players in the transcript. Takes a few seconds. And it's going to move on to the next phase. So it's parsing the insights. So you can see it's going through those system instructions right now. All right. ChatGPT is already finished. So here you go. You can see what it's doing here. High impact insights. It's giving us some neat stuff. The aha moments. A moment of clarity emerged when John Munsell presented the strategy canvas. Blah, 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 blah. Let's see. Charleston and Scott Brown's responses revealed genuine enthusiasm about pairing analysts with data engineers. So that's interesting. Another key moment occurred when Judy described how upskilling even an assistant could generate organizational leverage across departments. So anyway, this is an interesting thing. The unspoken pain points is another one that's kind of interesting that it pulls out. She's talking about their clients' reliance on platforms like WhatsApp for critical operational communication is a challenge, right? It's a security risk. And so what we want to do is point out how they can leverage that. And then we get into decision-making intelligence, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to go through here. All right, so here we go. So now it's got all those insights. I can take all this and I can review this and say, is there something really interesting in here that I want to make sure makes it into the proposal, which is why I have it pause. Now, if I go over to this one, you can see it's got other interesting things. When clients approach Premier demanding generative AI everywhere, they start telling them, look, your data is garbage. So that's interesting. Let's see, we keep going through here. Revenue opportunity, competitive advantages, strategic implications for partnership. All right, bottom line is interesting stuff here. They possess client relationships. So this could be a good partnership for us. And it tells us, when we should do a follow-up. All right, but it's ready for now step 2. So I can just simply say continue. And it'll then move on to the proposal. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now, this is going to be interesting because it has no data to work with. Okay, so we need to give it information. That's why we want one with a knowledge base. So I'm curious as to what this would actually produce if we don't give it a knowledge base. Desired outcomes, it tells us what that is. Phase 1. Okay, so now because we discussed all of this in the conversation, it's giving us some stuff here. So a lot of this was discussed, but the actual details and pricing are not exactly accurate. You see over here, it's created a little artifact over here, and it's got some more stuff. Now, what I'm going to do is do the same thing, but I'm going to go in here and I'm going to edit the GPT. Now, I could over here, this is what is neat about ChatGPT. You can duplicate the GPT and then change the name of it. Whoops, hang on, you got to do it over here. And it carries everything over. And so now I have 2 of them. You can't duplicate them in Claude, which is kind of a pain. But I've got it over here. And now what I want to do is upload some knowledge-based documents. Well, in this particular case, we were talking with them about our certified implementer program. So what I'm going to do is take all of this stuff and I'm just going to upload those as knowledge docs. And you can see they upload. Now, one of the shortcomings of ChatGPT is when if you click on this, it just gives you the name of the title. It will only do that, by the way, if it's a PDF. If this is a Word document or a text document, you click on it and nothing happens. And the thing I don't like about it is you can see it's truncated the name, so I can't read the full name, which is frustrating. And especially if that was a text document, I couldn't even click it to bring it up, but it is what it is. Okay, so here we go. Now we've got that done. Update that. And then let's see how this one did at the partnership launch. Gives you some certification phases. So this has some stuff that, again, it was pulling from the conversation, but it's not accurate. On the other end, if I were to go into a project, and this one has the exact same prompt, but it's got the knowledge documents. So here I can just take that same transcript and run it in there. And again, just notice that all I did was upload the transcript and hit go because that's inside my system prompt. All right, I'm going to do the same thing over here. We don't need any text in here. And that's going to roll. Gives us another briefing. In this particular case, I probably could have turned off the deep thinking part because it does take a little bit of time in a demo, but we'll just play around with ChatGPT now. The good news is the upload is obviously working. It wasn't earlier this morning. It kept failing. So it gives us more insights that we've already kind of reviewed. All right. And so now I can usually just hit Y for yes, and it'll proceed. Now it's generating the proposal. Okay, so see what I know, because I know how the thing works. This is a lot more detailed because it has the knowledge base documents in it. And it goes into the skills builder pricing, it goes into revenue opportunities, it goes into next steps, all that stuff. And it's addressed from me. And one of the things that I like about ChatGPT is it'll ask you if it can do other things, and it can pull out more. Now that you've got a knowledge base and you've got the transcript in there, you could ask it to do a lot of other interesting things based on that. So I literally could go up here and say, look, I want you to change the pricing from this to this, or any number of things now that it's got that document. So I might even just tell it to geez. Let's see if it'll do that. Okay. And so there it goes. So it gives us a whole, neat thing that it could add in there. So that's because it's got all that data already in there. So now let's go check in on Claude, and then it's ready to move forward. So I'm going to hit Y, and now it should generate the proposal as well. It's going to do a lot more thinking. Here we go. And it's following my format. It's giving me the summary of the concerns and the problems, and it really nails what those issues were, and then says, okay, this is what Premier Consulting wanted, and this is their vision of success. Here's our proposed solution: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And it's very detailed, and it's pulling right from our knowledge-based documents. Now, in ChatGPT, because I have a lot of other things in here, I could literally just pull in another custom GPT, and like, for instance, I could just call in a sales critique, or I could call in um, let's see what else. I could literally try to write a hook for the thing. I don't want to do that. But I could do a personality analysis and pick somebody in there and have it tell me how that person makes decisions. So if I were to pull that in there, and let's see, who would be our lucky winner here? How about we go with John Charleston? Um, Now, this particular GPT may go through a different process, but yeah, here we go. And I'll just say, yeah. So I've pulled in a completely different GPT now. So you can see how I'm threading these things together. Ah, phooey. I don't know whether they must be updating ChatGPT today. Okay, so here we go. It gives me some interesting insights on him, right? This openness, his conscientiousness, and then it tells me what his communication style is, etc. All right, now here's the fun part. I'm going to skip this last one, and I'm going to go to the persona emulator, and then I'm going to say, and review proposal. So now it's looking over that proposal that it just wrote, but it's looking at it from the perspective of John Charleston. And then it's telling me what it needs to tighten up. Okay, that's pretty cool. And then says, do you want me to revise the proposal? So I'll just say, yeah. And then it'll do that. Now, think about the time saving here. This is why I was telling you this potentially could take a couple of days in our previous world, but it also would never be this customized. It would never be this tight. There's not an ounce of boilerplate in here. And what we're trying to do is build it so that we address all of the concerns. It saves our time and it saves our prospects time as well. So everybody wins on this. So we don't have a meeting where the prospect goes, well, I told you this and you don't have it in the proposal, right? So we could just keep going back and forth and doing this. But then we end up with a proposal and it can export it as a PDF or any number of things. All right. We don't have that capability in Claude. So I can't go from one to the other in Claude without building an automated agent on the back end by pulling in and out of something like Zapier. So that's one of the cool things about ChatGPT is you can roll in and out of these custom GPTs, and it's just a whole lot. It's just fascinating what it'll do, and it saves us a ton of time. So the bottom line is when you're building a GPT, what you don't want to do is try to build something that does everything or something that's really, really over engineered, or you have so many instructions in there that it doesn't even know what to do. And so you've got words that conflict with words. It's what we call prompt conflict. So we don't want to build anything like that. So you want to learn from your mistakes and you want to constantly iterate, which is why we like to build things using that particular style of prompting so people have scalable, shareable skills. And then what we're trying to do is get the GPT to handle those first drafts, to gather all the research we need, and to create some standard responses. But then we want to inject the human side of things. So we want to review that, make final decisions, look for those nuanced situations. And then, of course, we're never going to just email out a proposal. We want to have a meeting with the client and go over it so we can have an interaction. We're not trying to just go AI to AI. We want to have a human interaction, but it helps to have AI assist all of that and speed the process up. So here's what we could. Yeah, here my challenge basically to you guys is to build your own GPT. So you could literally do it in a day if you wanted to, or you could do it faster than that. But essentially in the morning, just analyze your workflows and identify one task, and then take that and you could literally take the workflow or the task list and run it into ChatGPT or Claude and tell it to write system instructions to make it a custom GPT, and it'll help you break that down. And then think about what are the knowledge base documents that you could be putting into this as well, and make sure you assemble all those. Now, if you're doing it correctly with your prompt or your AI strategy canvas, you can create these documents so they're really rich and detailed. And then you're just going to test and refine in the evening, right? Or if you're just trying to knock it out in 5 hours, then you map your workflows in hour one, you choose and define your goal in the next hour, and you draft those system instructions. And this one, again, AI assisting will really help speed that up. And then you create your knowledge-based documents. A lot of it you probably have, and a lot of it you're going to need to create. And then you're going to test it out, and then refine and optimize. It's literally not that difficult. The key is in the knowledge documents and in the system instructions themselves. And then with any luck, by Friday afternoon, you'll have one that you can test on Monday. So that would be my challenge to you is pick one task from all the things that we went over earlier today, and then write those custom instructions and then build version 1.0. Just aim for good enough. Don't aim for perfection. Just aim for good enough, and then use it in the morning. Literally, you could start cranking it out in the morning and see how it happens and how it works for you. And then, of course, you can just share your wins with your team, and then collaborate and build better ones in the future. So, all right. Well, that, my friends, is it. So,
Not
1,000 mile
really.
an hour tour.
No, that was amazing. And there are a couple of things that, if you don't mind, if we have a few minutes, that I
No,
think
we're
would be
good.
valuable to the group. I don't, I'm going to jump in front of everybody though, because I just want to focus on those knowledge docs for 1 second,
Mhm.
because there's such an integral part of getting an effective and efficient result is I'm assuming they have to be created. And I'm wondering, is there a strategy or a format for that information that helps the systems understand it better?
Well, it depends on what you're building, but yeah, there's always a strategy for doing it, which is what the strategy canvas is essentially about, is making you think through what documents you need to provide. A lot of like you'll have a website. More than likely, everybody's got a website. There's a lot of content on your website. You can use either chat GPTs, deep search, you could, or deep research, you could use Claude, you could use Perplexity, you could use any of them to search your own website and then come back and provide a really deep dive and description of all your, about your company, your values, et cetera. That'll produce a document, right? You can do the
Okay.
same thing for your persona. If you know who you're targeting, you do an analysis on that persona and you put that in there. But you might have brochures. You might have business plans. Like I got a business plan that I've uploaded in there. I've got um, all kinds of things. You just got to figure out what the documents are that you need and how detailed do they need to be.
I cannot even tell you how thankful I am that everybody has come to this webinar series. We had almost 1,000 people register across them. Everyone's watching the replays. There's quite a bunch of requests for the downloaded slides, which we will also have for this webinar. And the links in the notes, the show notes of the YouTube video and the post on the site will have links for everything that we've spoken about and how you can get in touch with John and work with him if you so choose, which I would highly recommend because he keeps it on a human level and a lot of people do not. And that's why I reached out to him because I was getting so frustrated. You got to use AI. You got to use AI. And I was like, how? How do you use it? I mean, I could futz around with it or I can just get like a little fast pass to the front of the experimentation line. So that is why John is here. And as we've been promising, John and I are going to just record a follow up sort of to wrap up this series and address the questions that we've gotten over the three webinars, as well as just some points of clarification to make sure that I call it level setting, making sure everybody knows what a GPT is and what a knowledge document is and things like that. So, John, anything to say to wrap it up, and then we'll let everybody go back to their lives, their real lives, not their artificial lives.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate everybody coming, and especially those who have attended all three. So if there's anything I can do for you, just you can reach me at Bizzuka, bizzuka.com, or through ingrain.ai. And if there's anything that you need, yeah, hopefully you'll get the book. If I think it's if you have Amazon Unlimited, it's free on a Kindle. So
Oh,
if Kindle Unlimited, yeah.
cool.
So how about it?
Excellent.
I think it'll
Well,
be free for another 30 days on that. So Anyway, there we
Very,
go.
very cool. Thank you again, everybody. And until next time, prompt long and prosper.
All right.